Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Annette. My name is Brian Mosley, and I'm also going to be presenting with Colby Ellis. And I'd like to first say thank you. Welcome to FedFleet 2026. Today's presentation is going to be about using your GSA fleet card. Course is really developed so that people who, whether you're a driver and you're learning how to use the card, or you're a point of contact in our system and you help manage vehicles, or you're a dedicated fleet manager, you should walk away with some tools and information that's going to help you in your day-to-day life as it relates to the GSA fleet card. As we look at this screen and we try to figure out what it is, I'll tell you a little bit about GSA fleet. We have around 231,000 vehicles. We do about 7 million transactions a year, and we purchase anywhere from 90 to 100 million gallons of fuel. It's a big program. It's a big mission. This picture represents a transaction in our program over the course of 24 hours. You can see that we cover almost all of the United States and many areas outside. The federal government has a big mission, and all of us are part of it. And it's our goal at GSA Fleet to give you a fuel card that works in the background and that product you don't have to worry about, that's accepted everywhere. So we're going to talk about 4 key pillars of our program. The first is seamless program management. This is the hard stuff that we do, so you don't have to do it. You don't have to dedicate people to this function as it relates to your vehicle fleet. We're going to talk about turnkey driver experience, how to use the card, and some of the tools that are available to you while using the card. We'll also talk about helpful rules of the road, what you can and can't do, a little bit about fraud and waste and misuse. And then we'll cover some resources. These are the things that you can use to help manage your fleet and make good decisions and have insights into how your vehicles are being used. I'll start with a quote from Henry Ford. He said, "Coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success." And that's our mission here, especially with the fleet card, is we want to work together with our customers, that's you, to come up with a product that works well for you and is, like I said, works seamlessly in the background. So if there are areas in the country or areas in geographical areas that you need help, please reach out to your FSR, your fleet service rep, and we can work on finding a product that works for your area. So that's the secret. We want to work together with our customers and come up with a product that works well for everyone. So the first pillar, seamless program management. I said we are things so that you don't have to dedicate resources to do it. And starts with a loss prevention team. These are data analysts that look through our transactions, looking for patterns that might represent fraud, waste, and abuse. And if they do find any kind of patterns like that, they will either reach out to the fleet service rep, the customer, or they may engage with the GSA Office of Inspector General. They operate similar to the purchase and travel card as an AOPC for the program. We manage the Smart Pay contract. We provide oversight. We manage the task order. This allows fleets to not have to worry about contracting as we do that for you and such. And then the OMB A123 Appendix B compliance. This is on card security and best practices as it relates to keeping the card secure and protected from fraud, waste, and abuse. We also do the fleet card audits. We support that when needed. We provide data for reporting. That's your fast reports that you have to do every year. And we provide that in an easy way for you to ingest and report. And we're always trying to look for new technology and innovation to introduce into this system, whether it's paying with a WEX RFID card or whether it's looking at mobile payment technologies or telematics integrations. We're always looking to innovate. Now we're going to turn into the turnkey driver experience. I'll start with a story. I think all of us either have experienced this or maybe are nervous about it. But let's say you're driving late at night on the weekend and you break down. You go on the side of the road. You call your office. You got nobody to talk to. What are you going to do? Well, we've designed the back of the car to be all the information you really need to get yourself out of trouble. So make sure so let's look at that. The first thing we're going to look at is after hours. That's weeknights or weekends. Um, After the hours of 8 p.m. Eastern time, we can call WEX customer service, and they are open 24 hours a day, and they can get in contact with a national towing vendor if the car needs to be towed, or they can they can coordinate the flat repair or whatever needs to be done to get that vehicle back on the road. Gives you peace of mind. If it's during business hour, we have a maintenance control center, and you can call them, and they can also get you back on the road, getting you the towing you need or the repairs that need to be done. Let's say you get into an accident. Well, other than calling 911 if needed, if you need to figure out what to do with the vehicle once everybody is safe and sound, you can call that same number on the bottom, um, the Accident Management Center. You can talk to a GSA professional and they can work you through what to do, how to do, where to take the vehicle. Another stress-free option as it relates to a stressful situation. If you're stranded or if you're at a pump and your card won't work, that's where you'll call WEX customer service, and they'll be able to issue a MasterCard over the phone, and you can pay inside at the cash register and get yourself back on the road. We also put a lot of good information on the front of the car, just for your reference. U.S. We like to remind the vendors that are doing service on government vehicles that the U.S. government is tax exempt, and so we've put that in the corner of this card. In the right-hand corner, we've reminded our drivers to enter accurate odometer readings. This is very important. We do our billing based on odometer entries, and since customers pay by mile, it's important that it's accurate. So when a vehicle is not does not have telematics assigned, that is the fallback. So it's important that you enter the correct odometer readings at the bump. And the other one in the lower left-hand corner is the tag number of the vehicle. Our program, which can be different from others, is the card is assigned to the vehicle and can only be used for that vehicle. So make sure you have the right card for the right vehicle. It was important to us that we find a provider that gives us the most coverage we can possibly get while giving us the best data that we can get. So the WEX fuel card that we're using right now is accepted at over 95% of retail sites in the United States, and that includes diesel. If you are in a market that doesn't accept WEX cards or at a fueling station, we do have MasterCard or virtual MasterCard that we can issue over the phone. And that's at over 500,000 locations nationwide. We have a lot of merchants, vendors that accept the WEX card. Over 45,000 will accept the WEX card for payment. You might ask where you can find a WEX accepting vendor, and I will show you. And for those customers or those folks with missions on the Canadian border, nearly 3,300 Canadian retail fuel sites are available to you. They fall usually under the brand names of Esso and Chevron. A perfect companion to your WEX card is the WEX Connect app. You can download it on Google Play or iOS app, Apple. There's a lot of good information in there. And the first one I said, there are over 45,000 vendors that accept WEX. You can use the app to find a vendor close to you. It's geographical based on your location that you can take that vehicle to for maintenance under $100. Additionally, you can use the app to find fuel that is cheaper in relation to where you are and make decisions based on the cost of the fuel. And lastly, this is a good tool when used in significant storm events or emergency situations where you might have lost power and you need to know which gas stations are transacting. This information is updated almost real time, so you can tell in the app if a gas station is operating or not. So it could be a good tool in natural disasters, significant storm events as needed. Many of you have mixed fleets. You have ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles, and you also have um, battery-powered vehicles. And a lot of questions come up. Well, why do I have a wax card if I'm just charging? Well, we want to use the wax card for incidental vehicle maintenance, things like wiper blades, etc. And if a battery-powered vehicle is needs to be repaired that costs more than $100, you can call that MCC or Maintenance Control Center, which the number is on the back of the wax card, and they'll get you set up with maintenance or whatever you're going to need for that EV. So they work similar to the ICE vehicles as far as the maintenance goes. For charging that vehicle, we have two options. We have a WEX RFID card accepted at the carriers below, and we have a charge point card. And it really depends on your situation as to which card you're going to use. Is it a WEX RFID or a charge point? The best place to start with discussing which card that you're going to need or want is to start with your FSR and talk about your unique, or not necessarily unique, but the situation you have on the ground for the electric vehicle that you need to have some sort of charging solution for. The WEX RFID works mostly in, it works well in all of these commercially provided charging pedestals, and the charge point works at some of these as well as private sites. So it really depends on what your needs are. That's which card you're going to get. People ask, why do we go with a like a WEX card? Why not like a MasterCard or a Visa? And the biggest reason I think that we go with the branded WEX card is data. The closed loop card WEX offers level 3 data, whereas a MasterCard or Visa card offers level 1. Some instances they can offer level 3, but they're not as consistent as a level 3 data capture that the WEX card gives. So what is level 3 data as it compares to level 1? And I like to do this through an analogy. Let's say you go to the grocery store and you buy yourself some milk, bread, eggs, maybe some cookies. And you get home and you go on your bank and you look and you see that you bought something at the grocery store, and you have a line item that says that you spent, say, $25, $30 for your food. That's with the MasterCard or Visa. With our WEX card, when if we were if the card gave level 3 data in the grocery analogy, you would see that you bought bread, eggs, cookies. The WEX card will give us that information on a fleet transaction. We know that unleaded diesel E85 was purchased. We know where, we know the address of the gas station, we know the phone number, we know how much taxes were exempted. There's about 35 to 40 pieces or uh, columns of information. So having that higher level of data capture helps us make better decisions as it relates to managing our fleet. Another benefit of the branded card is custom card controls. We have more robust controls over how that card can be used. We can decide how many transactions per day, how much per transaction, how much per day. There's a lot of controls that we can exercise that kind of mitigates our exposure to risk or overspend. Cards also have driver IDs, an additional security feature to keep them from being compromised. And of course, the virtual MasterCard, which is our catch-all. If the WEX card is not accepted, or the closed loop card rather is not accepted, we have that as a fallback, and we can use that to make the complete the transaction and get you back on the road. Another reason we use in our case, the WEX card, is that it saves the agencies, it saves the federal government money. WEX charges us net, and that's after taxes are removed. We save, GSA Fleet saves around 7 million annually. And because of the way we pay our bill, we also get rebates. So around 14 million we make annually on rebates. That total combined savings comes back into our program, and it will either keep our rates the same or limit the amount of rates, or they go up, and sometimes maybe potentially down. So we look for every opportunity to save money and use that money to control our rates as we go forward. And I did talk about the card controls that we can limit purchases to, especially to approved products that are for the vehicle. Sometimes merchants give discounts for using the Wax card that we have. And another reason is that we ensure that the expenses that are paid for with that card are tied to the right vehicle and they're billed to the correct agency. So yet another reason that we use a closed loop Wax card for our program to save money. Questions that have come up in the past too was, hey, my FSR told me that I purchased premium fuel, and I know for a fact that I did not buy premium fuel. And sometimes this happens. And so we talk a little bit about coding. The way that a transaction works is when you swipe that card at a pump, that pump assigns a code. It's a product code, and hopefully and typically it's right, but sometimes it's wrong. But even if it is right, sometimes it'll go to the merchant bank and can get changed there. Also, between the merchant bank and WEX, it goes through a processor and it can possibly get corrupted there. So what we try to do anyways, to minimize this impact is create some algorithms that compare the cost of premium fuel to unleaded fuel and try to minimize, approaching the customer with premium fuel transactions or stuff. And we do that with many products. So I would say though that if you have a bank or excuse me, a gas station that you particularly feel compelled to use because of its closeness to your work unit or whatever, you could work with that gas station to improve the codes, or you could use a different gas station across the street or something to prevent getting alerts on premium fuel miscoding. But that's how it happens. So next thing I'm going to talk about is the do's and the don'ts. What can you use your card for, and what can what can't you use your card for, essentially. So we'll start with the beginning. You can use your fleet card or charge card matching. You have to use the fleet charge card matching the license plate of the vehicle you have. If we remember in the lower left-hand corner of the card, it showed you that was the tag. So make sure that that matches. You cannot in our program use the wrong fuel card on the wrong vehicle. So it's important that you match those. You can use the WEX card for regular unleaded fuel and self-service fuel for GSA vehicle or alternate fuels as required. You cannot use it or should not use it for premium fuel or full service fueling. The only state in the country that has full service fueling is New Jersey. I think there's a couple of little towns, but other than that, you should be using self-service. We also understand that some vehicles, OEMs, have requirements for premium fuel or recommendations. If you have a question about whether your vehicle requires premium fuel, and that is the fuel that you have to buy, you're going to want to reach out to your FSR and make sure that that's just reach out to your FSR and cover that so that everybody's on the same page. You can buy immediately consumable items for your vehicle. Think washer fluid or fluid wipers or wiper blades. And you can use it to buy exterior car washes within your local guidance. Now, this question comes up a lot. what's the car wash policy, what's the car wash guidance. And from a national point, I can say that we have a guidance, but there may be areas in the program where there may be different needs. What you're going to want to do is reach out to your fleet service rep, and they'll be able to guide you and give you the best information for the area you're at for car washes. You cannot buy maps or air freshener. I'm not even sure you could buy maps at a gas station anymore, but you certainly can't buy air fresheners, can't buy a sub sandwich, lottery tickets, alcohol, all of which have been bought with the card. In fact, I always wonder, if someone won a lottery ticket, won the lottery using the WEX card, who gets the money? Something to think about. But you can't use your card for those um, consumables that don't can't be used on the vehicle, and you cannot use the card for excessive car washes or details. You could potentially get a bill back for that for overusing the card on that. You can use the card for mechanical repairs for the assigned GSA vehicle, but you can't use the card for upgrades. Um, there is a process for upgrading your vehicle. You're going to want to contact your FSR for your vehicle and talk about the upgrades that you're requesting, whether it's tires, snow plows, lift gates, whatever that vehicle needs to fulfill your mission. That's where you start with the fleet service rep. So I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the next presenter, and that is Colby Ellis.
All right. Thanks, Brian. And hello, everyone. I'm Colby Ellis. I'm the GSA LPT Zone 2 coordinator. And once again, thank you so much for joining us for this virtual FedFleet training. I know we wanted to all be in person, but like Annette said, nature had different plans for us. So I'm going to share some simple rules and guidance that make it easier to understand different fraud types and how gsafleet.gov can be a really useful resource for managing your fleet cards, reviewing transactions, and catching like red flags early. So helpful rules of the road is where we're going to start. So this slide basically shows the most common ways that fleet card fraud actually happens in the real world. Most of it isn't like overly complicated hacking or anything nearly as sophisticated as that. It's usually just like everyday situations that go unnoticed. So first is family and friends. This can be done by someone the cardholder knows. It often starts out small, but this still counts as fraud, and it can, add up to be a substantial amount. Next would be lost or stolen cards. So when cards aren't secured or reported quickly, they can be used before anyone even realizes there's a problem. This is why quick reporting and regular transaction reviews matter. And then the most common one now, or it's been becoming increasingly more common in recent years, is skimming. So this happens when card information is captured at the pump or point of sale terminal using hidden electronic devices. So because of this, the cardholder may still have the card on hand, but transactions start showing up in places that they've never been before. And then lastly is phishing. We've all probably heard of this before, but this is when someone is tricked into giving up card or account information uh, through emails or texts or phone calls that look legitimate. And once that information is out there, fraud can happen exceedingly quickly. So really the common thread here is that none of these are obvious right away. That's where gsafleet.gov can come in, so you can regularly review fill-ups, and you're more likely to catch unusual activity early on. Okay, so is this fraud or misuse? So we're all going to put on our fraud detective hats together. Soon I'm going to have you guys raise your hands by using the toolbar down below through Zoom. It just says raise hand. And you're going to answer whether or not you think this is misuse or fraud. Forewarning, like please don't type in the chat what you think the answer is, because that's just going to, blow up the chat and questions will be missed. It will drown out all of the questions that are currently being asked to the other business intelligence people that are on the call. So before that, let's go over what we're actually looking at here. So this is what the typical output and like header row line items will look like for fuel transaction reports and other similar reports, just kind of as a baseline. So days of the week, the date, the time, the odometer readings, the tank sizes, and units is just like gallons of fuel. So what we see here is first day on Tuesday is 6 transactions that happen within the span of 17 minutes. And as you can see, they're all very sporadic odometer readings. None of it is very sequential. And then the 6 transactions are all fuel transactions that add up to, when you aggregate them all, more than 50 gallons. And then we see a very similar story the next day, which is 6 transactions in the span of 17 minutes. Again, sporadic odometer readings aren't sequential, and then overtanking. So, the amount of gas pumped exceeds the tank capacity. So I'm going to, I guess, distinguish between what I mean by misuse or fraud before I have you answer whether or not you think this is misuse or fraud. So misuse is kind of just like you're not fraudulently using the card, but you are improperly using it. You are using one card to fill up multiple different government-owned vehicles, let's say. That's just one example. Then fraud would obviously be, you're using the card to gain some sort of personal financial advantage from it. So using the toolbar, raise your hand if you think this is misuse. To be interactive. We'll give it a minute. Are we able to see anywhere? Okay, I see it now. We'll give it another minute. Okay, I think that's good for now. Let's put the hands down then. Okay, now raise your hand if you think this is fraud. I'll give that another minute. Okay, hands down. So this is actually misuse. And there's nothing like inherent in what we're seeing with the transaction data that would make it like necessarily misuse and not fraud, but that's just what this was from data back in 2023. So I think a good portion of got it right. Okay, so more on skimmers. So what's typically observed is one accomplice will distract the station attendant while the other installs the card skimmer. So the cover is removed and the skimmer is placed secretly into the reader's electronic system, and then wireless equipped skimmers transmit card information every time you go and use the pump by inserting your card. So what are some ways that you can avoid getting skimmed? There's like no, objective way of just like always being immune from getting skimmed, but some easy things you could do is if you have the option using tap to pay. Um, another thing you do is use your credit card rather than a debit card. So that's because so fraud can affect a line of credit rather than your bank balance. And then also there's more consumer protections when you are using a credit card rather than a debit card. You could check for glue or tape or scratches, mismatched colors and materials on or around the card reader. That's a good sign it's been tampered with if it doesn't look like the rest of the point of sale terminal. And then this is just like a personal thing that I do. You don't have to do it, but I think it helps, or it definitely decreases the likelihood, is using the pump that's closest to the station and the attendant. They're generally lower risk due to the visibility and the oversight. There might be cameras that actually like have the closest station or have the closest pump within the purview of the camera recording. But no pump is completely immune. So more on protecting your fleet cards. Agencies shall ensure accountability, so know who had the card and when. Like Brian mentioned earlier, it's one card per vehicle, so use the correct one. Don't misuse the card. Keep your driver ID pin confidential. Do not write on it or near the card. And then just secure your cards. So, don't leave it at the repair shop. Don't, have it on the counter when it's not being used. Don't needlessly have it out in plain sight. So, I mean, just basically be mindful and conscientious when you are using your card. Okay, now I'm going to go over some resources you can use for managing the fleet card. GSAfleet.gov is basically your one-stop shop for ordering replacement cards, getting fuel summaries, and running detailed transaction reports. So these are the steps for ordering a replacement fleet card. It's a relatively seamless process. You make your GSAfleet.gov account and you log in. In the home screen, you'll be able to do a drop down where it says Manage My Fleet. Then Fleet Leasing Card Replacement will be what's in the drop down. You'll fill out, your agency, the address that you want the card sent to, and other specifics. And then cards ordered prior to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time should be received the next day via UPS. And I think upon receiving the replacement card, you should be able to just use it automatically. You don't have to open up the card or activate it in any way. So now onto the fuel use report. So this is the home page for gsafleet.gov. And this actually isn't what the top display of the website looks like anymore. Instead of home, offerings, manage my fleet, run reports and help, it's actually now offerings and manage financials, reports, and auctions. But regardless, you'll want to hit reports. Then there will be a drop down and you'll hit vehicle reports. So this is what will be displayed next. Within the vehicle ownership options, you'll want to either select agency owned or GSA leased. And then below that, you'll obviously pick vehicle fuel use report. Now, this is kind of when you get into like the more granular specifics to your agency and its needs. So you'll be selecting the agency, the BOAC. You'll be listing your legacy customer number. There are also different filters you can use for dates, fuel types, and how you want the transaction data to be grouped. And then at that point, you've just emailed to yourself very easily in the form of either an Excel spreadsheet or CVS file. So that's kind of just a quick little crash course into some of the helpful functions available in gsafleet.gov. But as always, if you need help with navigating more of the nuances on the website, please reach out to your FSR. So this is the Fleet Services Card User Guide. So it's accessible on the WEX website, but it's also sent to you anytime you order a replacement card, anytime you have a card reissued. It explains specific procedures such as entering odometer readings and your personal ID PIN when you're fueling at the pumps. It also helps you know what to do if you go to a location that doesn't accept WEX. And it also showcases the free WEX Connect mobile app, which Brian uh, recently went over. I highly suggest customers and drivers download the app because it helps you with finding the nearest WEX accepting locations. It shows you all the different fuel prices and also displays directions for getting to the nearest WEX accepting locations. And lastly, this is just a quick little overview of the GSA Office of Inspector General and how LPT collaborates with the OIG. So we work with them to prevent, detect, and investigate fraud in the fleet program. Our team is more so focused on prevention, early detection, and reviewing transaction data. So when something rises to the level of potential fraud or misconduct, the OIG is the one that brings independent oversight and investigative authority to the data that we're going to refer to them. They are the ones that issue subpoenas, conduct sworn interviews, and actually open cases for criminal or civil persecution. And then at the bottom, you can see that that's just the OIG fraud hotline. So anytime you suspect fraud or anything of that sort, you can contact them. And then this is more of our contacts. I'm not on there, I guess. I guess I'm just not that important. But the ones at the top are the ones that are mainly you'll want to refer to, which is the loss prevention team inbox, so lpt@gsa.gov. That's where you'll go if anytime you suspect fraud. And then replacement cards at gsa.gov is where you'll go if you want to, request a tracking number for a newly reissued card, if you want to ask about reissuing a new card, or anything, if you just have any questions about, new cards. And that, I think, is it. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Colby. Thanks, Brian. I think we do have a couple of questions that are still outstanding in the Q&A box. Kenna and Daniel have done an awesome job at answering those questions as you guys have gone through the presentation. But Brian, if you're able to take a look at those questions and see if we're able to answer them live, that would be great. And if anybody still has more questions, please go ahead and drop them into the Q&A box.
Yeah, so I'll start at the top, at least what I have. Well, we touch on EV charge cards like ChargePoint. Sally Acosta, we did touch on it. If there's something more you want to know on it, again, we have two different ChargePoint cards, depends on your situation. And so we can talk about specifics, but you want to start with your fleet service rep, and they'll help you determine which card is best for your situation and how to use it. Philip asked, does the current WEX card have contactless? No, not yet. Maybe in a bit. But right now we are transitioning from the magnetic strip on the back. As we get new cards into our fleet, we're going to the EMV chip and pen card. So you may have a regular card without the chip. You may also have a card with the chip that you could insert in that, but it is not tap to pay at this time. Jonathan asked, is there a leg regulation or FMR that speaks to the two-lock fleet credit card policy mentioned a few slides ago? Jonathan, yes, there is. If you would send an email to lpt@gsa.gov, we'll get you the link to that FMR that talks about that. lpt@gsa.gov. Matthew asked, what is the replacement card email address? It is replacement cards, plural, replacement cards @gsa.gov. And no space, so replacement cards, that's.
Great. Thanks, Brian, for going through those remaining questions. Again, we do have a little bit of time. If anybody has any additional questions they want to ask, please drop them in the Q&A. And I do see a couple more coming in. So Brian, Colby, I want to turn it back over to you guys.
I'll stick around for a little bit more time. So if you want to ask your questions, please feel free to do that. Elena asked, we are standing up our tribal government and looking to integrate our fleet account FedStrip to upgrade and enhance. Sorry, Elena, I didn't get the last part of that. Just stopped at enhance. If you want to kind of follow up on that, I'd be happy to give it a shot. Marvin, where can we see utilization of the WEX card usage like showed in this presentation? And does it show all the transactions? Marvin, you can get the fuel use. It will only show the fuel use, the stuff that you need for the fast report, and also to monitor what fuel is being purchased. You can get that in gsafleet.gov. And there's a section called reports. And in that section is among other reports, is a fuel use report. Again, if you want to reach out to your FSR, they can give you a full walk down on everything that's in gsafleet.gov, but that's where those reports sit in there. Donnell asked, we have offices that need to purchase wiper blades and windshield washer fluid. Currently, they cannot be purchased with a WEX card. Yes, typically you would get wiper blades with your preventative maintenance schedule. And sometimes you can get wiper blades from those same merchant or vendors that do preventative maintenance. You can buy wiper blades there. But it is very difficult. You are right. It's very difficult to use the wax card in parts store. They're not accepted in parts store. So you'd have to go to an alternate location that sells the wiper blades, like a preventative maintenance type of vendor. Greg's servant, assume Fleet Services Card User Guide is on GSA Fleet website. Yes, it is. It is combined with the customer leasing guide. It is a chapter within the customer leasing guide, and it covers a lot of what we talked about. And it is also on gsafleet.gov. I can't remember what section. I think it's the financial section, but it is there. What happens if you spend more than $100 on gas? All right, so there's two things going on there. We do not, especially on heavy vehicles and medium duty vehicles, their limit is not set at $100. It is higher. However, there are two factors: the card authorization, which is not the case for our heavy and medium vehicle at $100, and there's also the pump limit. A gas station may only allow $100 as their um, fraud or mitigation efforts to prevent pump and goes. So that might be the gas station using that may be what's causing the pump to shut off at $100 when you're trying to fill up your heavies. Next question, as a fleet manager for several locations, how do I get added as an authorized person to get information pertaining to the account? You can start with your fleet service rep, and they can figure out what you need to do and what access you need, and they can work on you in that capacity, but that's where you start. Next question is, when you need something like wiper blades, why can you not use the card at an auto parts store? The primary reason you cannot use the auto parts store is because there's no verification method that the parts that you purchased were placed on the vehicle that it's supposed to go on. So there's a high risk when you open up parts stores that the products purchased are not guaranteed to go on the vehicle, and that's why they prefer to use vendors when doing that. Why is the WEX card approved from GSA if a vehicle has already been serviced? I'm gonna see if I understand that question. If a vehicle has been serviced and it was done through the maintenance control center, they can still go out and get an oil change with a WEX card. That is true. The WEX card, the way the WEX card doesn't interact with the maintenance control center to validate that. So there's no system in place to do that. You would want to do is make sure that when a preventative maintenance is performed on a vehicle, that everybody in the command or in the office realize that it was done and doesn't need to be done again. It doesn't need to be done. It does happen. But the WEX card swipe and the maintenance control center are not connected like that. We also need to capture our indirect costs for our fast reporting. I am not familiar with that question. So Marvin Fraser, if you would send me that question to LPT, I will make sure that it is routed to the proper person to answer your question. lpt@gsa.gov. Joanna said, I missed that question. It disappeared on me. Sorry.
Brian, that question says, I tried to get wiper blades when getting an oil change and they didn't have it. They told me to try the dealer.
Yeah, that could happen. That's true. I think some vendors may not carry all the wiper blades that need to be carried. But you're able to get wiper blades at dealerships if you need to. Our PMs only cover oil changes, filters, safety inspections per the PM reports. I'm not sure what the question is there. If you want to rephrase it, I'll be happy to answer it. What is the limit for allowed consumable items in this per item per month? The cards are set at around $25 or so for miscellaneous type items. How many chips and cracks do I have to have on my GSA windshield to get it replaced? You can get for windshield type stuff, you can contact the accident management center. They can walk you through what you can do. I believe if there's a single, I'm not the expert in this category, but you can get it repaired. If it's not a crack, if it's just a chip, you can get it repaired as opposed to replaced. But it would be a conversation, between the FSR and you as to what you need to do with that windshield and how you need to repair it. If purchasing a consumable such as wiper blades while you are getting a PM, but the wiper blades would make the total service over 100. And that these questions are disappearing too fast for me. But typically, if the cost goes over $100, no matter what, it changes from being able to swipe it on a WEX card to having to call the MCC, or if that vendor, which is more and more typically is the case these days, might be an auto integrate third party, use auto integrate as a third party, they can enter that work order into auto integrate and that gets forwarded to GSA. But
Hey, Brian,
anytime,
the tail end of that question was, can they charge the card twice?
no,
Basically split the charge.
no, splitting the charge is not appropriate and it's not allowed. But if it does go over, there's an 800 number on the back of the card, and the vendor can call that number and get approved over the phone for the payment amount.
Also, Brian, every time one of the questions disappears, if you just scroll to the top, again, I'm like seeing it again once after it disappears.
Oh, okay, thanks. All right. Ice scrapers are not sold in GSA service providers in my areas and the recent weathers. Yes. So we don't really have an effective way to purchase wiper blades using the WEX card. You'll have to buy wiper blades through someone with a purchase card, more than likely. Not wiper blades, sorry, ice scrapers. If you don't have access to them in your area or at a WEX accepting vendor. Where can we see the WEX card transaction usage? You can see the fuel use transactions in gsafleet.gov in the fuel use report. Can you use WEX Connect to find car wash locations as well as that accept the WEX cards as well? Yes, you can use the WEX Connect app to find car washes that are attached to gas stations. And you can use the WEX card to purchase car washes from those gas stations. And it should be identified in the app as a car wash associated with that gas station. Elena, we are in the process of initiating federal grade upfitting for our government vehicles to support postal emergency management. Ensure requirements align with GSA fleet standards and federal chief directors. All right, so any kind of upfitting, any kind of modification to the vehicle, or any kind of technical, you would start with your fleet service rep. Just get in touch with them. If you do not know your fleet service rep, send me an email at lpt@gsa.gov and give me a G tag that is in your fleet. And I will find an FSR for you to talk to about upfitting and modifications to your vehicles. Some dealerships doing service to our vehicles say they usually contact GSA for authorization as opposed to using the WEX card. Is there usually a way to see where the billing statement went, or should I just request a receipt? You should always request a receipt from the vendor to ensure that whatever that the maintenance was completed per what the vendor said. So it is a best business practice to inform your drivers or yourself to collect the invoice and take it with you and keep it on record for a bit. For your PMs, wiper blade replacements are not included. They need to be purchased and installed by the dealership, but not part of an oil change. Is that sounds like a statement, and that may be true with certain dealerships. Which system supersedes GORP or telematics in GSA vehicles? Well, telematics is, if the telematics is installed on the vehicles, that is our go-to source for doing our billing or entering the odometer in the website. And if the vehicle does not have telematics yet, we use the gate odometer at the pump, that's GORP. And if that's not part of it, we ask customers to enter their mileage in gsafleet.gov. And there might be a fourth way that might be an upload element for our customers. I'm not really sure on that, but those are the primary three ways that odometers enter our system: telematics, WEX odometer entry, or the entry, the odometer entry entered at the military DLA pumps, or entering it into gsafleet.gov. Javier, anything new coming for Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands? Javier, I am working on it. I am working on it. There might be something coming, but you've been hearing me say that for years.
Hey, Brian, I'm going to jump in here real quick because somebody asked for the email address again, and I went to type it in and hit the wrong button. So and Marion just put it in the chat. Your team's email is LPT, Loss Prevention Team, lpt@gsa.gov.
GSA.gov, correct. All right, what do we got? We got a couple more questions. Firestone is not providing a repair with the a receipt with the dollar amounts on the document after service is provided. All right, so I'm gonna defer that question, Cheryl, to an FSR. If you'll send me a tag that's in your fleet, I will find you if you don't know your FSR, because I believe we are entitled, or you are entitled, to an invoice that says what was done to the vehicle, if I'm understanding that correctly. Cheryl, send an email to lpt@gsa.gov, and we'll get in touch with you to get a few more details, see if we can figure out what's going on there. All right, I think we're at the last question. I got two questions, I think, right? So if you fill up the tank and need to buy wiper fluid and that vendor sells it, do you need to keep the fuel purchase separate from the consumables? It probably will be separate because you close that transaction out at the pump. You'll have to go into the store usually to buy that. You're buying two different products, so would not really be considered a split purchase at that point. A split purchase is for a single work order or a single product. And I think that is it. On behalf of GSA Fleet, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to learn about the GSA Fleet Card. And it has been our pleasure to share this information with you.
Thanks, Brian. We have a couple of closing announcements here. Again, as Brian said, we want to thank everybody for participating today. The recording will be posted to the GSA Fleet YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. Again, we thank our presenters, Brian and Colby. We thank Kenna and Daniel and Stacy and Marianne for monitoring all the Q&A. Hopefully we got everybody's questions answered. If not, if you have questions specific to the WEX card, please, again, use the email lpt@gsa.gov. And you can always contact your FSR if you have any specific questions, that are unique to your situation. Be sure to join us next week. We have a couple of other sessions next week coming up, Wednesday and Thursday, both 2:00 p.m. Wednesday is going to be a open discussion, gsafleet.gov Q&A. So bring your questions about gsafleet.gov, and we'll have tons of subject matter experts on the line to answer your questions. And then Thursday is going to be Federal Fleet Management Regulations, Guidance, and Q&A. So bring your your questions to that one as well. And just as a programming note, both of those are going to be for 90 minutes as opposed to our traditional 60. Again, you're going to receive an email once the recordings have been posted. The slides will not be posted. You will also receive an email with a certificate for participating in today's session if you join on your computer. Thank you again, everybody, for attending our virtual FedFleet, and hopefully we look forward to seeing you in 2027. Everybody have a great day.